How's it going? I'm Dono and this is How to Happy. In this video, we're going to be talking about finding the meaning of life, which right off the bat, you're probably going to think I'm way overstepping my bounds. And this video is not about me saying, this is exactly what the meaning of life is, and this is what you're supposed to do. We're not going to go into that territory. But what this video is about is a couple steps or ideas that you can take to kind of find a little bit more meaning in your life and try to find a little bit more purpose. Now, to start off, again, I'm not saying that there's any one-all, end-all answer. I know that a lot of people out there believe that there is. I'm also not saying that I'm gonna give you a formula and you'll immediately just know exactly what you're supposed to do for the rest of your life. That's not how life works. I know that intuitively, you know that. That's just not really how things go. Now, that being said, there are some strategies that we can use to try to figure out a little bit more what the meaning of our life is, right? I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of philosophy and talk about, what is the true meaning of life and what does it mean and why we're here. Like, I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about is something that's a little bit more practical. And what I mean is your life, right? So what do you want to do with your life? And a lot of people are really, confused about this. They feel like they should have this one driving purpose that they always know. And that's not really realistic because over the course of your life, things are going to change. A lot of times it's really hard to know what your next step is. I think a really good place to start is to really grind down and figure out what your values are, right? This doesn't necessarily need to be like a purpose that you're driven to all the time, but just some of the things that you feel are really important to you. A lot of times we feel like intuitively we know what that is, but I promise you if you take the time to sit down and try to write it out, it's going to be a little bit more difficult than you think to encapsulate everything that you think is valuable to you or think is important in a way that's not completely overwhelming. Now, on top of those values, you're going to want to figure out as well kind of the activities that you're interested in, what you like to do, what you don't like to do, so that you can get kind of a broad picture of how you enjoy spending your time and how you don't. Now, this is just kind of a first step to help get you focused so that you can start thinking about what things add purpose to your life. Now, this is a little bit different than pleasure, which is where a lot of people get mixed up, right? If I'm asking you to figure out what you think brings you happiness all the time, people might say something like, oh, well, every time I eat chocolate, I get happy, so I guess I should just eat chocolate all the time. But the main distinction here is you also have to be doing things which provide purpose. So if you were going to just eat chocolate every day forever, would you feel fulfilled? Would you feel like you have lived a life worth living? Now, that's where this purpose component comes in. And again, I know that some of you are watching this thinking like, how am I even supposed to figure this out? So if you're having trouble with even the values or the things that you like and dislike, you might want to go one step back and just go to exploring, right? If you don't quite know what you like yet, you probably haven't been exposed to enough different ideas and enough different activities to figure out which things really resonate with you. So if you're, confused on that front, start doing things like reading philosophy or religion or talking to people about their values and how they got to them, and start that journey towards uncovering what things are important and purposeful to you. As long as you keep taking action and trying to learn stuff and talking to people and experimenting with new activities, then you're going to get a lot of experiences. And then at the end of that, you'll be able to kind of sort through and say, okay, here's the things that are important to me, here's the things that aren't. But if you just stay stuck in these routines that you already have and you never are able to put your values together, then it's going to be a lot harder to figure out where your purpose is. Now, on top of this, even if you go through this exercise, right, you figure out your values, you figure out what your purpose or list of purposes are at this time, it's probably going to change over time because the nature of life is that things are constantly evolving. So don't feel like this is, okay, I have this one purpose and I need to make sure that I do this for the next 80 years, right? You may be in a position right now where family is what's most important to you, but 5, 10 years from now, you may shift into some other realm. Maybe for some reason, business and wealth becomes more important to you, and that's kind of your driving force. Now, you also need to find ways to have balance in your life, and that basically just means your own personal balance and what you find to bring you the greatest combination of joy and purpose. But to get started, it really helps to kind of have an idea of how these things play together and which things really ignite your passions. So if you find yourself, with things changing and those values not really lining up, you're doing stuff that used to make you happy that isn't making you happy anymore, it's a sign that you should start thinking about your values again to realign some of your core purpose. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, I have these core values and they'll never change. But a lot of times they actually do change depending on what your priorities are and where you are in life. So if that happens to you, don't feel, oh man, I used to believe this and now I don't and I feel, disconnected. No, it's a natural progression of life to kind of evolve through your belief system. So the next question that people might have is, okay, but where do I start getting my values from? Like, how am I supposed to know which values to pick? And at the end of the day, it's really up to you to decide. I'm not going to be able to give you a framework or an idea for what your values should be. It's up to you. But just quickly, like one example is, somebody might play video games all day and it brings them a lot of pleasure, but it doesn't bring them any purpose. So they should be careful, since playing video games and that kind of pleasure is not in their values, that it may lead to regret later on. However, you could take another person who does the exact same thing, plays video games, but feels pleasure and purpose out of it, right? They say like, yeah, a big part of my life and what's important to me is getting pleasure. One of the ways I do that is through playing video games. Could play the exact same amount, take the exact same actions, but have it lead to far less happiness. So it's all about calibrating what's important to you. I'm not here to say what's a good path or an incorrect path. Now, there are definitely some frameworks and types of activities that are more likely to generate happiness than others, but at the end of the day, it does depend on what you want to do. Now, I'm just gonna go on like a little side rant real quick. It actually really doesn't matter as far as happiness goes if your values align with society. Now, obviously, for the greatest number of people, it'd probably be better if you're a productive member of society, yada, yada, yada. But actual happiness doesn't align with morality. And the example that you can take is someone who, is a murderer, right? If your values dictate that what brings you pleasure and purpose is murdering people, then you can actually have happiness without being, a good person. So these two things are not necessarily related. Again, I think there's definitely some skewed perspectives out there. I'm not going to go into it too far to really try to persuade you one way or another. And there's definitely some frameworks and ways of looking at the world that are more likely to bring happiness than others, but you can actually still be happy with basically any set of values as long as you are using them in a way that makes you feel fulfilled and purposeful. Now, I'm not going to recommend that. So one other thing is that it might be worthwhile to really examine where you're getting your values from and what kind of behaviors that's leading to, because there are other things that also impact your happiness, like your health, right? You might have a belief that steak is the only thing that's going to be purposeful for you. But if you just eat steak until you get sick because you don't have enough of a balanced diet, then you're going to have unhappiness in some other forms. There might be a few of you who are thinking, well, there are definitely some ways of looking at the world and some things that are wrong and bad and evil and yada, yada, yada. I am not going to jump into that in this video. I'm not going to try to talk about good and evil, right and wrong, morality. That's way beyond the scope of what I want to get into. But just know that really grounding down in your values and understanding who you are and your purpose can provide a lot of happiness. The underlying theme is that you need to know these values, or at least the vast majority of people need to be in touch with their values before they can construct a view of the world that actually leads them to happiness. They need to know what types of actions are going to make them feel good and align with this greater purpose that they have. Without this purpose, it's a little bit harder to find happiness. Now, existential truth and happiness aren't necessarily on the same plane, right? You can have beliefs of many kinds and still be absolutely happy. So that's why I'm talking about this in such a detached way. However, the psychology of your brain is wired to work in a certain way, so there are still actions, even if you don't believe in, a certain set of frameworks, that are more likely to generate happiness than others just because of the way that we're wired. So just a quick recap before I close out. Basically what I'm saying is knowing your values and what you like and dislike is a really good way to start figuring out your life's purpose. If you're really having a hard time even thinking about it, then I really recommend going out and interacting with a lot more resources. Read more, talk to people, find audiobooks, find anything that you can that discusses these types of topics and listen to them carefully and see if they can guide you a little bit closer to finding your values and your purpose. Eventually, you'll find some values that resonate with you a little bit and a purpose that makes some sense. And from there, you can start constructing, a worldview that helps you find more happiness. So with all that being said, let's move on to the exercise section. Number 1, what do you believe your life's purpose is? What do you want to accomplish, or who do you want to be? 2, if you can't answer the first question, take some time to reflect. What are you interested in, care about, or hold to be your highest values? 3, if you can't answer the second question, pick out a few books to start reading or other materials to go over. You're probably going to want to look in philosophy, religion, or personal development type topics. But basically, you just need new ideas and exposure to find what you believe in. So hopefully that helps a little bit. I know that for a lot of people, this video, they're just gonna be like, you're not going to help me find the purpose of my life. But hopefully there's a few ideas in there that can help you get started and kind of start walking that path. That's all I've got for this video. So as always, if you have any questions, comments, topics you want me to cover, put them down in the box below. Beyond that, I will see you next time.
You can check out more content at howtohappy.com. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you can stay up to date on the videos. We've also got a Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook that you can check out. Reflect, take action, and enjoy life. See you next time.